Welcome to a very special episode of Ultra Healthy Video Game Nerd. Hopefully you've noticed that I don't usually have much interest in horror games, but even I'm willing to make an exception in the right circumstances. And that time has come. I've discovered a PlayStation 1 game whose gameplay is so unusual, whose imagery is so unsettling, and whose backstory is so implausible that it needed to be dug up from obscurity. That game is called Kowai Shashin, or, translated literally, Scary Picture. Kowai Shashin was developed by Media Entertainment, the company that hated polygons. I've reviewed most of their other PlayStation games, including Koro Koro Postonin, Kyuin, and the Cooking Action Puzzler trilogy. Media Entertainment was known for odd and quirky games whose hand-drawn 2D graphics contrasted sharply against the prevailing mood of the era, but I was surprised to find that they had also released a horror-themed game, and initially, uninterested. After all, the PS1 has plenty of cheaply made horror-themed adventure games in Japan. Most of them are nearly unsellable, and I don't play text adventure or horror games. But then, I happened to see a description of the genre. A 2D exorcism action game. And my journey began from there. Are you ready to discover just what an exorcism action game entails? In Kowai Shashin, you play the role of a young woman named Hiyori, who lives in a rustic mansion and rarely goes outside. She makes a living by using her special ability, the power to exorcise ghosts caught in pictures. Each stage revolves around a picture sent by a client in the accompanying letter, which amount to requests for Hiyori to release the ghosts in the pictures from their suffering. The entire story is voiced quite convincingly, which, along with the unsettling music, builds the gloomy atmosphere you would expect from the name. Once a stage begins, you'll be faced with a picture that may have several ghosts or tormented souls within, and this is where Hiyori's abilities come into play. There are 3 steps to exorcising a ghost. Locate the ghost within the picture, capture their spirit, and exorcise them. You locate the ghost by moving the cursor over the area you think the ghost is and turning on your psychic meter. This makes the cursor start spinning and change color depending on how close the ghost is. If you're relatively close, which you should be, the cursor will turn yellow. If you're really close, it will turn red. But if you've completely missed the mark, it will remain blue and only spin very slowly. Once you've found the exact pixel the ghost was hiding in, its true form will appear, which you must capture. You do this by shooting some sort of psychic energy blast with the circle, square, triangle, or X button, depending on whether the ghost appears at the top, bottom, left, or right of the screen. In the beginning, just one shot will capture the ghost, but as the game progresses, ghosts take more and more hits before they can be captured. Finally, you'll need to exorcise the ghost, which is where Kowai Shashin's true gameplay lies. The moment the ghost is captured, a ring appears in the middle of the screen with a sequence of button presses to be followed clockwise, almost like a rhythm game or a QuickTime event. There are 9 sequences, but in the beginning, successfully completing only 2 or 3 of them will safely exorcise the ghost and remove its spirit from the picture. You only have a second or 2 to complete a sequence, and the button presses do get pretty complex, but they are the same every single time. So most players will effectively need to memorize them before getting much further than the 4th or 5th sequence. Thankfully, you'll have had plenty of chances to practice by the time the later stages come around, and require you to clear 8 or even all 9 of the sequences before the ghost is successfully exorcised. Using all of this psychic power takes a toll on Hiyori's spirit, which is represented as a candle at the side of the screen. Searching around for ghosts with your psychic meter turned on or taking hits while trying to capture them drains the meter, and if it completely runs out, it's game over for our busty young exorcist. In a world where a reasonable number of people actually got to try Kowai Shashin, opinions would probably be split on the gameplay. While the short amount of time given for completing the button presses does keep it challenging to the end, it's also true you are just doing the same thing over and over. It's the atmosphere and overall presentation that turn it into a complete and highly unique experience. First of all, take a close look at the pictures these stages take place on. Some of you have probably already realized, Kowai Shashin uses digitized graphics. That's right, They used pictures of real locations and converted them into grainy PS1 graphics. And the effect is chilling. In this case, the low resolution of the PS1 lends itself perfectly to portraying these forgotten back alleys, school grounds, and other locations that could just as well be from any nameless neighborhood in Japan. They make you feel as if you've stumbled upon something you weren't supposed to. Like something that would have been passed around within an underground circle of ghost hunters back in the early days of the internet. The ghosts themselves have pretty obviously been superimposed, which belies the limited budget a company like Media Entertainment would have had to work with. Still, a few of them are pretty unnerving, like the wraith hanging from the shrine in the first level, and the karaoke booth always weirded me out for some reason. Some people may be disappointed by the corniness of the ghosts, but the backstories given for the pictures make up for it. Like the dare to break into a shrine's grounds at night and take a picture, or the story of Hiyori's first love in elementary school, whose soul was caught in limbo after experiencing an unnatural death. On the one hand, it's easy to accuse Kowai Shashin of being simplistic and repetitive. The gameplay is the same throughout the entire game, down to the button presses. You can play the game a second and third loop, which change the button sequences, but that certainly wouldn't have taken much effort to implement, and nothing else changes. But Kowai Shashin uses highly unique and convincing aesthetics to deliver a complete horror experience. It shows just how important seemingly little things can be. The heartbeat that speeds up when you get closer to a ghost, the eerie wind sound that plays while looking at the pictures, and the impending sense of doom the story gives. Even the sound effects and unorthodox-looking symbols that appear during the exorcism phase are oddly satisfying. And most importantly, the feeling that you're seeing some obscure, forgotten place or situation that actually existed can't be found in any other game I know of. As it is, Kowai Shashin is one of the strangest ideas I've ever seen for a game. The gameplay itself isn't revolutionary, but the type of psychological horror it employs is totally unique. But it doesn't end there. It turns out there's something else that makes Kowai Shashin different from other games, and dangerous to own. When I was originally looking for gameplay videos on YouTube, I found one claiming to contain an urban legend about Kowai Shashin. At first, I figured it was just something a bored person made to get ad revenue, but a web search revealed that this urban legend had caught on long before and was known to a surprising number of people, especially considering how obscure the game is. Even people selling the game on auctions will often allude to it in the description. The story was supposedly revealed by a former employee of Media Entertainment, and goes like this. The person who headed the development of Kowai Shashin, whose name is abbreviated as K-Kawa, wanted to use real ghost pictures for the game. After a failed attempt at gathering pictures through ads in gaming magazines as a sort of promotional gimmick, he, or possibly she, ended up contacting a company known for making ghost hunting videos, and acquired around 30 pictures of supposed real ghost sightings. Unsurprisingly, real haunted photos don't always lend themselves to becoming stages in a video game, so after some hesitation, Mr. Keikawa decided they would alter the photos a bit to make them more convincing. The ghost-like shadows and spirits supposedly captured on film were emphasized, stretched, and otherwise manipulated with graphic software. Some were even cut and paste from one picture into another for the sake of expediency. Messing around with anything related to the dead in Japan is a big taboo, so it didn't sit well with the artists working on the project, but with so much budget already put into the game, development continued. Apparently, whatever it was that was trapped inside those pictures wasn't too happy about getting cut up and disfigured, because strange things started happening around the Media Entertainment office. Employees would sometimes hear high-pitched screeching sounds, which were much too loud to be imagination. The real concerns began when a person suddenly screamed and passed out during debugging, and had to be taken to the hospital. After this, employee morale dropped and multiple people took frequent or extended leave. Everyone was on edge. Not even a week after the debugging incident, they received a phone call that one of the lead directors on the project had been hospitalized. He had cut off his own thumb. When they went to see him at the hospital, he said he had a clear memory of cutting it off the night before, but couldn't understand why, as if he hadn't been in control of his own body. Mr. Kowai and his team started to realize these incidents always happened after someone had played Stage 6, the picture of the train station. He decided everyone involved with the project would go to a shrine and be purified by a Shinto priest before any more programming would be done. After the visit to the shrine, they pasted protective charms called Mayoke in the office to ward off evil spirits. Just to be safe, they also made a debug code to skip the problematic Stage 6 during playtesting. Things settled down enough for work to continue, and the game code was nearly ready to go to print, when one day Mr. Kowai called in and said that he wasn't feeling well and would take the day off. No one thought too much of it, until the next day when the company president came in and told the staff that Mr. Kowai had been found in a train station bathroom, hanged. The train station was in the opposite direction of where the office was in relation to his home, and only one station away from the place shown in the picture of Stage 6. Kowai Shashin was released, but with only a fraction of the staff who had actually worked on it shown in the credits, and was much less refined than what the company had originally hoped for. Hardly a year later, Media Entertainment ceased operations, and those unfortunate enough to have bought Kowai Shashin were unknowingly putting themselves at risk of being on the receiving end of the wrath of the restless spirits connected to it, simply by possessing the disc. Is it utter and total bullshit? Almost certainly yes. But it's the only case I've known in which a physical game was thought to be cursed. It goes to show that if you're willing to dig deep, there are some truly amazing stories,